So, at the beginning of a nail treatment, you must always start by sanitizing your client's hands. You can use a hand sanitizer and some damp, saturated cotton wool. Moving on, you're going to file and shape your client's natural nail. Follow the guide on our online course. We're going to shape this client's nail into a nice round oval shape using a 180/240 grit nail file. It's very important that when you're shaping a natural nails free edge that you use the correct file for each client's nail type. For example, if your client has weak nails, you're going to want to use a 240 grit file. If your client has stronger nails, you can use a 180 grit file. We do recommend clipping the nails down if they are very long, but please do not use the nail clippers too close to the skin because you can risk actually clipping the client's skin, the very tip of the finger. Also, nail scissors are okay if the nail is very thin, and scissors are safe and easy to use. If you are filing the free edge, try not to file down the sides of the nail, meaning that the white of the nail can be filed, but if you are filing into the sidewall, which sometimes you may see I am doing here, it is because the client's natural sidewall has actually lifted and is growing outwards. That means it's growing out and upwards. It doesn't have a seal. And in that case, it's okay to file the sidewall. However, be very, very sure you're only doing it if the nail is actually growing up and outwards from the proximal nail fold. Also, when you're finished doing the filing and shaping, it is really important for you to clean under the free edge with an orange wood stick. And just be very careful not to puncture the hyponychium and then to bevel the free edge. So beveling the free edge means just taking the nail file at a 45-degree angle and pulling upwards, so that way you're lifting out any of the natural nail that is still stuck to the free edge. Again, this client has severe growth issues. The nail is actually growing up and outwards. She doesn't have any protection, so we're having to go a lot lower than we want to. You can also use nail clippers to clip away the actual lifting part of the free edge if you need to, but just be very careful. Okay. So this step is all about cuticle work. So there are three parts of the cuticle area that we need to know about. One is the cuticle, which is the dead skin that grows and rides its on the nail plate up the nail. And then we have the keratinized proximal nail fold, which is the skin that is a little bit thicker, that sits more at the base of the nail, and it is actually attached to the finger, but also can have dry areas that need to be cut or trimmed off, or cuticle softeners used. And then we have the proximal nail fold, which is the living skin. And because the proximal nail fold and the keratinized proximal nail fold is actually quite close to each other, you have to be very, very careful not to damage or make it bleed or cut. Um, Also, when you're pushing back the cuticle, which is the dead skin that is growing up the nail plate, we have to be careful because usually along the side walls it will bleed if the cuticles are overgrown. So we need to be gentle, but we still need to remove all the dead skin, because if we don't, the gel polish will lift. When you're finished, take a dust brush and remove all the excess dry skin from underneath the proximal nail fold, and then you can go in and start doing your removal of shine. We use a sanding block here. These can come in big or small or square or round. We use the 100 grit side because it's actually quite soft in comparison to the 180. I always recommend using a brand new one for every client, because the old oils or skin cells or anything could be left on this, and you're not able to really thoroughly clean it. So you want to try to go one direction if possible. Now, moving on, we're going to continue to do all 10 fingers. Once all 10 fingers are done, we're going to move on to the next step. So then you're going to use your dust brush to remove all of the excess dust. And then after, you're going to use your nail cleaner and a lint-free nail wipe to degrease and remove any excess oils from the nail plate to make sure that you have proper adhesion. Also, go under the free edge if you can at this point, just to make sure that there's no oils after gathering underneath the nail's free edge and causing the gel polish not to stick. So the next step is going to be to use your cuticle nippers. I recommend using a stainless steel disinfected and sterilized nippers in a 5 millimeter or 3 millimeter head or jaw. Remember at this point, you're only cutting the keratinized proximal nail fold, that is the white dead skin part of the proximal nail fold. We are not cutting living tissue. If you are cutting the keratinized proximal nail fold, known as the KPNF, we really want to make sure that we are being very, very cautious. So when you are closing your jaw, always ask the client if that hurts. Just this way, you'll ensure that you aren't going to cut living tissue before you actually close the jaw. Remember not to pull, to clip, and then once the skin has been cut, to then pull away. It's important to put all your dead skin into the couch roll, and then when you're finished, disposing of all the dead skin so it is not going to be, flying around the place. The next step is going to be to use your nail plate dehydrator. Some people call this a nail primer. Basically, it is isopropyl alcohol, and sometimes it contains acetone. And this is just going to balance the pH of the nail and change it to the pH that is required for the treatment. The next step is to use your base coat. The base coat is going to be used along the free edge. This is called pre-sealing. Pre-sealing works really good for clients who are lift prone, but also everybody should be pre-sealed. So you would use your base coat just on the very, very tip of the free edge. Try not to get it on the top of the nail, just the very tip. And then you're going to seal that in the lamp for 60 seconds or 10 seconds. And when you're finished that step, you're going to apply the base coat to the surface of the nail, the entire surface of the nail. And as you can see here, I have a technique where I just apply a little bit to the nail and then I will go in with a painting brush. The painting brush is usually a round brush or a square brush, and I'll put this coat on nice and thinly. There's no need to put this coat on very thick. The only reason why you'd need to use the actual brush that it comes in the bottle and put that on thickly is if you have a client with uneven nails. Their nails are maybe bumpy or they have some holes or dips in their nail. And so maybe using the other brush would be better. But this brush is very good for beginners because it helps you to get close to the cuticle without flooding the cuticle. And it's also a lot more easier to control. If you have too much on your brush, you can wipe it on your couch roll. I find this technique very useful for beginners. And then when you are finished, applying the base coat to all 10 nails, you will go in and you'll cure it for 60 seconds and then move on to your next step. Remember, all gel polish coats will always be tacky after you cure them. This is natural and it's normal, so don't panic or think it hasn't dried. Okay? So at this stage, you're going to use a cotton tipped stick. You can get these on Shein, Amazon, lots of websites. They're usually used for brows, but they are a very thin stick that has like cotton wool wrapped around it very tightly. And I saturate these with isopropyl alcohol and just clean around the free edge to make sure that there is no pooling or running of the base coat into the sidewalls. This can happen very easily, and then once you do the color, it will flood all over and then you'll just get lifting. Now, there are many different techniques to apply color, but if you want to use the normal brush that comes with the gel polish, this is one way you can do it. There are many ways to apply it. Some people apply it like here to the first, I suppose, top of the nail, and then once it is applied to the top of the nail, you can go in and go a little bit closer to the cuticle. I recommend trying to leave a gap around the cuticle of about a half a millimeter. This way you'll prevent flooding. And the clients generally won't notice anyway because it's just a very, very fine gap. And the closer that you go, the more the cuticle needs to be lifted up a little bit. So clients who don't like that, lifting of their cuticle might feel uncomfortable. You're going to want to use a different technique. So again, you can see here, you can apply to the top of the nail and then you can come a bit closer to the cuticle to prevent flooding. Always check the right and left side of your nails when you're doing them, because what can often happen is if you're right-handed and you're working on the client's left hand, you forget to look at the right side of their nail, which is really their left side, your right side, and there'll be gaps on both sides of the nail. It could look really good from the front, but not from the sides. Okay, once you've done that first coat, you're going to cure it in the lamp and then you're going to take it out. What I noticed here with these nails were that when I cured them, they had shrunk back off the free edge. That's because I was using a slightly different base coat to the brand of gel polish coat I was using. And I don't recommend that, but I had a lovely new collection I wanted to try out. So I just went back in and capped the free edge after I'd done the first coat and cured it. And then this way it was sealed. And now I'm going in and I'm doing my second coat of color. And I don't have to cap every coat. Generally, the base coat and the first color coat and the top coat should be sealed. The second coat of color does not generally have to be sealed at the free edge. So once all of these are done with my second coat of color, I can then either go in and top coat my nails, or I can go in and I can do my nail art. So this client wanted just little swirly lines on two fingers. So after this step, I'm going to do some nail art. I'm going to cure the nail art, and then I'm going to apply the top coat and cure that. Okay. So this is the final step of the gel polish routine where you're going to go in and you're going to apply your top coat. This is probably one of the stages where people make the most mistakes because they either don't put enough gel polish top coat on and they wind up with not actually sealing the gel polish properly, and so it starts to peel or lift or break down on the sides. So I really recommend taking your time with the top coat and really like looking under a magnifying lamp to make sure you have actually applied it everywhere. And also another really important thing to do is to seal the free edge. So there are just two main things you need to watch out for when you are doing your top coat, which is one, not putting enough top coat on, and two, putting too much top coat on that it actually floods the cuticles and then it just ruins the whole gel polish treatment because your client will get lifting and it will just look absolutely terrible and they'll probably pick it. When you're finished doing your top coat, don't forget to cleanse down the tacky dispersion layer if there is one. And if there isn't a tacky dispersion layer, then you can just move on to the last two steps, which is ask your client to wash her hands, or you can wash them for her with a little bit of soap and a dust brush, dry them down really well, and then apply cuticle oil.